It was midnight when the radar detected something it shouldn't have. A massive object was flying over the Arctic faster than any known aircraft. The U.S. command center went silent. Then alarms blared. For 46 minutes, the world stood one button away from nuclear war. But there was no missile. It was something else, something secret. Buried deep in Cold War history are experiments so dangerous they could have ended humanity. Most of these were never taught in schools, and some remain classified to this day. But now, one by one, we reveal them, and it all starts with a file that vanished in 1983. A Soviet double agent smuggled it through East Berlin, hidden inside a music tape. That file contained details of Project Pluto, an American Doomsday weapon, a nuclear-powered missile designed to fly indefinitely, releasing deadly radiation in its path. It had no warhead. It didn't need one. Its engine alone could destroy cities with radioactive fallout. They called it the Flying Chernobyl. Imagine a missile that never runs out of fuel, circling the globe for weeks, waiting for a command to strike. The test engine was so radioactive that birds died mid-flight above it. But Pluto wasn't the only horror being built in the shadows. On the Soviet side, a monstrous plan was unfolding. Project Dead Hand, also known as Perimeter. It was an AI-controlled system designed to launch nukes after everyone was dead. If Russian sensors detected nuclear blasts, saying no human leaders remained, the system would launch everything. Automatic Armageddon. No one pressing buttons. Just death, triggered by silence. The world never knew how close it came to triggering this chain reaction. In 1995, a Norwegian weather rocket launched and Russia mistook it for a U.S. first strike. President Yeltsin had the nuclear briefcase opened. His generals stood frozen. 15 minutes ticked by, then they called it off. But that day, Dead Hand nearly woke up. Meanwhile, in hidden bunkers under Nevada, the U.S. was testing mind control. Project MKUltra, civilians were drugged with LSD without consent. Hypnosis, sensory deprivation, electric shocks, it was real. Even soldiers were unknowingly experimented on. The goal, create a controllable assassin, a human weapon. Many victims lost their minds. Some committed suicide. All records were supposed to be destroyed in 1973, but a few survived. What they reveal is chilling. In 1958, something exploded over the Atlantic. No warning. No cause. American military satellites picked it up. At first, they feared it was nuclear, but it was a Soviet satellite. It had self-destructed. Why? To stop the West from recovering its tech. It was one of many Soviet secrets, buried in orbit. During the Cold War, space was not about exploration. It was the perfect battlefield. The Soviets experimented with space nukes, orbital spy cameras, and more, but the US had its own plans too. Introducing Project Horizon. The Pentagon wanted a military base on the moon, a full outpost, with soldiers and nuclear weapons. Yes, a moon base with missiles, their goal? Control space before the Soviets. They even proposed launching nukes from the moon. The moon would become the ultimate high ground, but the cost? Over $6 billion. In 1960s money. The idea was abandoned. Quietly, but it wasn't the last insane plan. Meanwhile, deep in Montana, the U.S. built launch control centers. Underground bunkers protected by steel and concrete. Each could fire dozens of nuclear missiles. Even if the surface was destroyed, operators were trained to press the button. Even if they lost their families above, they practiced war every day. And behind their smiles, pure terror, because accidents happened. In 1980, a worker dropped a tool in one silo. It punctured a fuel tank, which exploded, sending a 9-megaton nuclear warhead flying into the air. It didn't detonate, but it could have destroyed Arkansas. That was Titan II Missile Complex 374-7. One man died. The incident was kept secret for years. The Cold War wasn't just strategy, it was full of close calls. One such event happened in 1983. Soviet satellites detected incoming U.S. missiles. Again, Colonel Stanislav Petrov was on duty. But he didn't believe it. He went against protocol, didn't alert Moscow, didn't push the retaliation button. Because he trusted his gut, he saved the world. But what if he'd been wrong? It haunts military leaders even today. Then came Able Archer 83, a NATO exercise, simulating nuclear war. But it looked so real, the Soviets prepared for actual war. They armed missiles, loaded nuclear bombers, and sent submarines into position. One mistake, and history would be different. Able Archer is now seen as the closest we ever came to World War III, and most civilians never even knew it happened. Now let's talk about something different. Sound surveillance. The US developed underwater microphones to hear Soviet submarines from across oceans. It was called SOSUS, a massive underwater listening network. Cables stretched thousands of miles. They could track whisper-quiet Soviet subs. But the Soviets responded with titanium submarines. Faster, deeper, quieter. One was the K-129, another was the K-278. Komsomoles, a super-deep sub with nuclear torpedoes. It could reach depths over 1,000 meters. It sank in 1989 after a fire, and still leaks radiation today. Now back to America. The US tested nuclear weapons underground, hundreds of tests. In Nevada, some tests cracked the earth. One created a radioactive Lake Sedan crater. It's still there, still glowing, still deadly. And then there's Project Sunshine, where scientists studied radiation on human bones. So they stole body parts from corpses without consent, even from babies. All to study fallout effects. It sounds like science fiction, but it's all documented. And it was justified as national security. Let's move to another eerie story. Woodpecker signals. In the 1970s, radios around the world picked up strange tapping sounds, like machine gun noise. It came from the Soviet Union. It jammed communications, confused pilots. It was part of a radar project called Duga, a massive over-the-horizon radar array. Its antenna stood over 500 feet tall. Its job? Detect American missiles instantly, but it interfered with everything, even air traffic control. It became known as the Russian woodpecker. Today, the site still stands, rusting, silent, deadly-looking, and now let's talk about Project A119, the US Air Force wanted to nuke the moon, to show power, to frighten the Soviets. They planned to detonate a nuclear bomb on the lunar surface, so people on Earth could see it, a political message. In space, it never happened, but the documents exist. Even Carl Sagan worked on it. Imagine the moon, scarred forever by war. Let's return to Earth, to checkmate. That was the code name for US satellites. Their purpose, spy from space. They could read license plates through clouds from 100 miles above. Each satellite had a nuclear-powered engine. One fell back to Earth, Cosmos 954. It crashed in Canada. Scattered radioactive debris for miles. The cleanup took months and cost millions. That was a Soviet satellite, but American satellites weren't much safer. Another US spy satellite failed re-entry. It splashed into the Indian Ocean. The public was never warned. Now let's talk biological weapons. The Soviets had an entire city for germ warfare. It was called Stepnogorsk. There, they engineered smallpox, anthrax, and plague. Weapons that could wipe out millions. Even after the Cold War, some samples went missing, and to this day, no one knows where they are on the US side. Dugway Proving Ground was the testing site. In 1968, an accident occurred. Nerve gas leaked. Killed 6,000 sheep in Utah. The US denied it at first, but documents later proved it. If the wind had shifted slightly, it could have killed an entire town. Biowarfare was banned later. But much of the research remained hidden, one of the strangest programs. Acoustic Kitty, the CIA implanted microphones into cats to use them as mobile spies. They trained them to eavesdrop on conversations. The first test, the cat ran into traffic. Killed instantly, millions of dollars, wasted. But it shows how desperate both sides were, desperate and paranoid. Which brings us to nuclear launch accidents. In 1961, a B-52 bomber broke apart over North Carolina. It dropped 2 nuclear bombs. One came very close to detonating, out of 4 safety switches. 3 failed, only 1 wire prevented disaster. If it had gone off, it would have destroyed everything within a 15-mile radius. Today, that area is farmland. Most people don't even know. Then there's Project Looking Glass, flying command centers, 747 jets, always airborne, equipped to launch nukes mid-air. In case Washington was hit, they could command World War III from the sky. These planes flew non-stop for 29 years. One was always in the air. Every hour, every day, prepared for the end of the world. That's how real the Cold War was. It was daily doomsday preparation. Yet life above ground went on as normal. Kids watched cartoons, while 1,000 feet below, soldiers waited, fingers hovering over launch keys. All it would take was one signal, just one, and civilization would disappear.